He came by and he said, "Oh God," he said, "that's Architectural Digest."
For 60 years, Ernest Borgnine kept quiet about the co-star who destroyed his life. Now, shocking details about what really happened on set are revealed. Terrible scenes, angry outbursts, and the event where someone was second-degree burned after flinging coffee. The most startling revelation, though, wasn't only about business. It was quite personal. Today, the truth about Hollywood's most damaging rivalry is finally exposed. Ernest Borgnine's trip to Hollywood was spontaneous. Born in 1917 in Hamden, Connecticut, Ernest Borgnine was the son of Italian immigrants who came to America in search of the American dream. But before he could even recall his birthplace, his life took an unexpected turn. When he was just 2 years old, his parents got divorced. He spent the following 5 years completely absorbed in a new world once his mother took him to Italy. He became as much a part of the culture as if he had been born in Carpi near Modena and spoke only Italian. Then in 1923 things changed again. The family returned to the United States following the reunification of his parents. This move was not solely motivated by the desire to return home. It was time to make a new beginning. His father changed his name from Camillo to Charles. The family name, originally Borgnino, was shortened to Borgnine in an attempt to sound more American and blend in. Young Ernest's destiny would be shaped by numerous shifts, this identity shift being just the first. Born and raised in New Haven, Connecticut, Borgnine had no intention of becoming an actor. He wasn't the kid who wanted to be a celebrity or who broke into movie theaters to view films. He was engrossed in sports, enjoying the hardness and competition. His high school yearbook made no reference to drama or theater. At the time, there was no sign that he would ever be seen on camera. But fate had a different plan, and it started with the US Navy. In 1935, just after graduating from high school, he enlisted. He served aboard the United States S. Lamberton for 6 years. He was prepared to go on after being released with honors in 1941. However, just 2 months later, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. He was unable to watch his nation wage war. He re-enlisted in January 1942 and joined the USS Sylph, a patrol boat tasked with defending the Atlantic coast. War changed him. The experience toughened him. It helped him develop discipline and a deep knowledge of brotherhood, which would later inform his portrayal of military characters on television. By the time of his release in 1945, he had earned multiple military decorations and risen to the rank of gunner's mate first class. In the Navy, he almost made his career. He pondered carefully about re-enlisting for another 10 years. If he had, Hollywood would never have known about him. But then his mother said something that stuck in his mind. He had a strong personality, so she suggested he try acting. One thought changed everything. At first, acting seemed like a strange choice. He had no connections, no experience, and no idea where to start. But that didn't stop him. He attended the Randall School of Drama in Hartford before relocating to Virginia and joining the Barter Theatre. The beginning was not glamorous. The Barter Theatre was founded during the Great Depression with a simple yet original idea. You could trade your tickets for supper. Consequently, actresses were often paid with vegetables instead of money. Borgnine didn't care. He played any part he could find, night after night. When he wasn't performing, he painted sets, fixed clothing, and even cleaned restrooms backstage. One night when he was playing, he had to run a live chicken across the stage. The bird flew into the throng and started clapping wildly as everyone screamed and laughed. He gained an important lesson in spite of the chaos. He learned how to improvise, engage the audience, and turn a disaster into a performance. He also met and studied future stars Gregory Peck and Patricia Neal. Then came his big moment. Tennessee Williams cast him in The Glass Menagerie. He thought he was terrible. Not everyone in the audience agreed. Following the triumphant performance, people started to pay attention. By 1949, he was on Broadway. His debut role was in the enduring drama Harvey, starring Hollywood legend James Stewart. But the voyage had not been easy. The casting directors didn't know how to deal with him. His face was too nasty for comedy, too funny for drama. The idea that no one could decide his position was refuted by Harvey. Being a male nurse, Borgnine adapted to his role, watching Stewart's every move in order to gain knowledge. He even maintained a notebook where he documented his research and analyzed Stewart's line delivery in an effort to become an instant expert in the field. The play's 175 performances gave him the consistency he needed. The TV then called. In 1951, he made his television debut in the low-budget science fiction series Captain Video and his Video Rangers, playing a villain. He was recognized for it even though it wasn't a prestigious position. Columbia Pictures saw his promise and offered him a minor part in The Whistle at Eaton Falls. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. He got his big break in the film From Here to Eternity in 1953. Before Hollywood, he had spent 10 years in the US Navy. Because of that background, he was ideal for military roles. Nothing, though, could prepare him for the part of Sergeant Fatso Judson. The persona was savage and unpleasant, in stark contrast to the real Borgnine, who was known for his kindness. The most disturbing scene in the film was when Judson killed Frank Sinatra's character, Angelo Maggio, with a nightstick. It was frightening, brutal, and hard to witness. Sinatra himself had doubted Borgnine's ability to play such a scary role. However, that uncertainty disappeared as soon as the filming started. Borgnine gave the role his whole attention. He was alone for days to get into the right frame of mind. As the cameras began to roll, he underwent a full transformation. His act was so convincing that Sinatra refused to talk to him off camera for weeks. The crew avoided him as well. The intensity of the role influenced more than just his co-stars. It stayed with him long after the filming was finished. The scene had been troubling him for months, he subsequently claimed. Audiences' reactions were even more forceful. Some were so disturbed by his performance that they threatened to kill him because they were unable to tell the actor from the part. The role caused him to suffer, but it also helped him become well known. 2 years later, he surprised Hollywood once more. This time, he wasn't playing a villain. He portrayed a typical butcher who was looking for love in Marty. It was the complete opposite of Fatso Judson. The film itself was dangerous. The production budget was a pitiful $343,000, a record-breaking amount for a Best Picture winner. But Marty connected with audiences in a way that was surprising. At the 1955 Academy Awards, Borgnine won Best Actor. He was chosen for a major role in their debut at the age of 38, making him one of the oldest performers. He unexpectedly triumphed against Hollywood heavyweights James Dean and Spencer Tracy. He delivered a simple message of acceptance. He thanked his mother for encouraging him to follow his dream of being an actor. In reality, however, he rarely got the role in the first place. Director Delbert Mann's first choice was Rod Steiger, who had played Marty in a television adaptation. In the beginning, Borgnine was not even considered. That changed after a chance encounter at a Hollywood party. He was so endearing that the filmmakers decided to give him a screen test. Ernest Borgnine's acting was so natural that Mann subsequently said he didn't act Marty. His name was Marty. That section changed more than just his career. By proving that movies might be popular without the aid of big actors or extravagant budgets, it transformed Hollywood. Borgnine resisted being assigned to only one duty. In 1967, at the age of 50, he played General Worden in the legendary film The Dirty Dozen. Even the dangerous jump from a moving train was something he insisted on doing himself. Younger co-stars Lee Marvin and Charles Bronson were taken aback by his stamina. 2 years later, in The Wild Bunch, one of the bloodiest westerns ever made, he once again astounded audiences. His character, Dutch Engstrom, was cruel but strangely charming. one scene stood out among the rest. As he killed scores of soldiers, he burst out laughing. That moment haunted him for years. On the other hand, Ernest Borgnine's rise to fame on television was unexpected. His major break on television came from McHale's Navy. The 4-season series helped him gain notoriety. Borgnine played Lieutenant Commander Quentin McHale, a laid-back officer leading a quirky crew. This part was entirely different from the intense roles he had played before. Most people didn't realize that his act was based on personal experience. Even during the most absurd parts of the performance, he was intuitively confident in the role because he had served in the Navy during World War II and had spent years aboard the USS Sylph. But McHale's Navy was more than just jokes and quick cash. During Season 2, Borgnine was engaged in a major on-set accident. An explosion from an early pyrotechnic device burnt his hands and face. Filming had to be stopped for 3 weeks while he recovered. When he came back, his dedication was stronger than ever. In the same year, he received an Emmy nomination for the role. The show even had an unforeseen effect on actual military operations. A classified letter from 1965 states that the US Navy had consulted with the play's authors. According to certain officials, McHale's creative approach to problem-solving could have real-world uses. The result was Operation McHale, a series of naval training exercises inspired by the play. Although the details of such exercises are still under wraps, it is impossible that a comedy could have an impact on military strategy. Borgnine's television career kept changing in unexpected ways. In 1984, he played Dominic Santini in the futuristic, action-packed helicopter series Airwolf. Even though he was 67 years old at the time, he had no plans to slow down. He even did many of the techniques himself. That decision nearly cost him his life in 1985. While they were shooting, a helicopter lost control and crashed just a few feet away from him. His prompt reactions allowed him to escape with very minor injuries. He was then introduced to a whole new generation when he played Mermaid Man in SpongeBob SquarePants. It all started with his grandson, who watched the show with great interest. The child insisted that he should be on it. Borgnine brought this up one evening in 1998 at a charity gathering. Immediately, a Nickelodeon executive in attendance asked him to read a few lines. Using only a napkin as a script, he delivered the performance that secured him the position. Mermaid Man gained popularity over the course of 17 episodes and 13 years. The writers of the series even subtly alluded to Borgnine's real Navy service in the character's speech. He recorded his final song 2 weeks before he passed away. At 95, he was still performing, making him one of the oldest active voice actors in 2012. Before becoming a TV legend, Borgnine had no interest in television. He was offered the main role in The Real McCoys after winning the Oscar for Marty in 1956. He told reporters, "TV is a fad," and turned down the offer. It won't last. At the time, TV was considered a step down by most cinema stars. That mindset changed in 1961 at a charity event. He met a young boy who was battling a fatal illness. He was told by the youngster that he liked watching his movies in the hospital. The event dealt a serious blow to Borgnine. He realized that watching television was more than just amusement. It was able to reach more people than movies could. When he decided to go into television, Walter Brennan's show The Real McCoys was already a hit. That refusal was a lesson for Borgnine. When McHale's Navy appeared a few months later, he took advantage of the opportunity. Years later, he admitted his error about television. In an interview, he said, "I was a fool to think TV was beneath me. It doesn't matter how big the screen is. It is related to the size of the audience's heart." Ernest Borgnine's romantic life was just as dramatic as his life filled with iconic performances. Over the course of 95 years, he was married 5 times. While other marriages ended in scandal and heartache, one ended in lasting devotion. His first wife, Rhoda Kemmons, was his spouse prior to his rise to fame. They were married in 1949 and had a daughter, Nancy, in 1952. After more than a decade of building a life together, Hollywood changed everything. As Borgnine's career took off, his marriage ended. It came to an end in 1958. He began a new chapter in his romantic life with Katie Gerardo, a Mexican actress known for her fiery presence on and off screen. They were married in 1959, but their union was everything from peaceful. Their fights attracted media coverage, and their passion often led to public arguments. By 1963, they had had enough. Another marriage ended, another lesson learnt. Then came the briefest and most infamous of all. In 1964, Borgnine married Broadway star Ethel Merman. They spent just over a month together. At first glance, it appeared to be a Hollywood fairy tale. They took a honeymoon trip to Japan after being married in June, but instead of being a beautiful journey, it turned into a disaster. Fans surrounded Borgnine wherever they went. Merman, used to the spotlight, felt excluded. The pressure grew with every day that passed. In Tokyo, everything went awry. Witnesses later claimed to have heard a heated argument echoing through the hallways of their hotel. By the end of the trip, Merman had reached her breaking point. In her rage, she threw a ring of pearls and diamonds into a koi pond. Merman never brought up the marriage again, and less than 5 weeks after saying "I do," she filed for divorce. Instead, she let her silence do the talking. In 1978, she released an autobiography. One of the chapters was titled "My Marriage to Ernest Borgnine." Readers turned the page expecting a story. Instead, they found a blank page. The comments said it all without a single word. Borgnine later admitted that it was painful. "I will always remember it as a smack in the face." He said in an interview, "I felt that blank page spoke louder than anything she could have written." After the disaster, Borgnine married Donna Runcorn in 1965. Their 3 children were Diana, Christopher, and Sharon. This marriage lasted a longer time than the others, but by 1972 that also resulted in divorce. Finally, he found the one. In 1972, Borgnine met Norwegian entrepreneur Tove Tresnes at a party in Las Vegas. Knowing his reputation, she was first apprehensive, but Borgnine's charm won her over. For the first time, he felt truly stable after they were married in 1973. There was more to Tove than his wife. She was his partner in all respects. She founded a successful beauty business, and Borgnine became her closest ally. He even joked that he was the oldest living Avon lady in the world after appearing in her ads. Their love endured for nearly 4 decades, longer than the combined duration of all his previous marriages. Tove was often blamed by Borgnine for his tenacity in his final years. He said in his last interview weeks before he died, "I think it's because of the love I have for Tove." Tove was with him, holding his hand as he passed away on July 8, 2012. After searching for years, he had at last found a permanent love. However, Ernest Borgnine and Shelley Winters were both well known and had strong personalities, so their time together on the Poseidon adventure was anything but straightforward. The 1972 catastrophe film focused on a group of passengers fighting for their life after their ship crashed. Borgnine played a tough investigator, and Winters played his determined wife. Despite their strong performances, they had a challenging working relationship behind the scenes. It is well known that Winters is a demanding person. Because she believed it was crucial to fully comprehend her characters, she often pushed for changes to the screenplay. One day, she arrived on set with a 20-page booklet that told the story of her role. She insisted that lines be altered to reflect her preferences. Due to the screenwriter's opposition, Borgnine found itself in the middle. Winters subsequently admitted that working with her was exhausting because he wanted to be in control of every tiny detail. The most difficult portion happened during a difficult underwater scene. Winters continued to do her own stunts in spite of the production team's safety worries. She wanted to prove that she was still a champion swimmer at the age of 51. What should have been a quick shot was extended to a demanding 14-hour day. The sequence had to be filmed 65 times before the director was satisfied. The lengthy hours irritated everyone, including Borgnine, but he remained professional. He subsequently described it as one of the most challenging days of his career. Notwithstanding the challenges, Winters delivered an outstanding performance. When she received an Academy Award nomination, her efforts were rewarded. In spite of his frustration, Borgnine later admitted that Winters' instincts were often right. Years after the release of the film, he referred to her as a force of nature. Unpredictable, difficult, yet undeniably talented. Working with her was both a task and a privilege for him. In the end, their fights on set only intensified their performances. Furthermore, although Ernest Borgnine had always held Spencer Tracy in high regard, working with him on Bad Day at Black Rock in 1955 was a very different experience. As much as it was about respect, it was also about intimidation. Filming started in Lone Pine, California, on July 12, 1954. It was hot, well over 100 degrees, but Borgnine barely noticed. The idea of sharing the screen with one of Hollywood's top actors consumed him too much. Tracy, 54, a two-time Academy Award winner, was known for his straightforward performance. Borgnine was still getting established at 37. That experience gap overshadowed every minute they shared together. Tracy had a talent for wobbling his co-stars. He didn't just remember lines, he improvised, changed, and delivered them with such confidence that it was hard to tell what was scripted and what wasn't. Borgnine hadn't seen that before. Tracy once said something unexpected to break up a tense scene. Borgnine froze. The scene was real, and that specific take was included in the final cut. The director, John Sturgis, liked to use long, continuous takes. For an actor like Tracy, it was no problem. For a person like Borgnine, it was agony. On August 17th, at a pivotal moment, he botched his lines 7 times in a succession. The more mistakes Tracy made, the more irritated she became. Borgnine was shrinking by the second. The animosity between them was mirrored in their performances. Coley Trimble was represented by Borgnine as an obnoxious thug. Tracy played John J. McCready, a man who never gave up. Compared to their scenes together, the battle scene in the town's diner was far more intense. Filmed on August 23rd, this brawl became one of the most iconic scenes in the film. Borgnine's character was a one-armed battle veteran, thus Tracy had to vanquish her with sheer ability. In reality, Borgnine was bigger. Despite being significantly taller, 5'10", Tracy weighed only 160 pounds, while he weighed approximately 210 pounds and stood 5'9". Their physical contrast made the image seem too vivid by the 7th take, and it took them 14 tries to get it right. When Borgnine accidentally punched Tracy in the jaw, the set went quiet, and Tracy hesitated for a second before brushing it off as if nothing had happened. As the strain mounted and Borgnine kept making blunders, his already uncomfortable situation grew much more so. Then Tracy yelled at the top of his lungs, "You're not only wrong, you're wrong." His tone was somehow intimate, and it stuck with Borgnine for years. Tracy's single-arm judo throw of Borgnine into a table marked the conclusion of the fight. There were no stunt doubles, just 2 exhausted actors giving it their all. He seemed to be addressing Borgnine directly, rather than simply the character. Despite everything, their relationship was altered by that altercation, and Tracy, who had been keeping Borgnine tense for most of the filming, suddenly found a newfound respect for him. The last take was shot at exactly 4:17 p.m. The aggravation, perspiration, and tiredness made the scene feel genuine and unfiltered. Soon after, he proposed Borgnine for the 1955 Oscar-winning part of Marty. When Ernest Borgnine joined Johnny Guitar in 1954, he expected a typical film production, but instead he became embroiled in one of the most intense feuds in Hollywood. Joan Crawford and Mercedes McCambridge were at war, not merely at odds. When Crawford found out that McCambridge's husband, Fletcher Markle, had dated her before, she became enraged and the battle started. When Borgnine witnessed Crawford come onto the set, take McCambridge's outfits and toss them onto the highway, forcing the crew to rush to rescue them before they were lost to the Arizona desert, she turned McCambridge's life into a misery from that day on. Director Nicholas Ray had to patch things together after Crawford and McCambridge's sequences were shot separately because they wouldn't be in the same room. Borgnine could hardly focus on his work because of the strain. That was annoying enough, but on September 3rd, during a particularly heated moment, Crawford and McCambridge lost control and started swinging instead of yelling. Borgnine and his co-star Sterling Hayden had to step in and break up the chaos. Later, Borgnine called it the most unprofessional conduct he has ever seen. Crawford once flung a cup of boiling coffee at a teenage production assistant after a bad take, but he saw enough to know that she had an uncontrollable anger, and he never turned on Borgnine. The poor guy received second-degree burns. Years after the incident, Borgnine remarked in an interview that Joan was like a ticking time bomb. He never forgot it. You never knew what would enrage her, and her voice was keen. And then he happened to overhear her shouting at a costume designer. She was angry, but before she could enrage Borgnine, he stayed mute and just walked out of the room. Despite her indignation, Crawford surprised the team on the last day of filming with personalized bottles of Pepsi Cola as a way to thank her husband, the company's CEO. But the tension remained, and before she left, she had one final run-in with McCambridge, telling her loud enough for everyone to hear that she would ruin her career. Years later, it was like walking on eggshells while juggling dynamite, Borgnine recounted, looking back on the event with a mix of awe and incredulity. Joan was brilliant, but boy was she scary.